This is Melissa Gonzalez. Today is February 24th, 2013, and I am interviewing Mr. Rex Latham for the first time. This interview is taking place at the University of Texas at Arlington Central Library in Arlington, Texas. This interview is sponsored by the College of Liberal Arts and is part of the Maverick Veterans Voices Project. So we'll get right to it. Where are you from originally?
I was born in East Texas, and after age 11, I grew up in Arlington, Texas, about 10 minutes from UTA.
Did you participate in ROTC in high school?
No, it was not offered.
Okay. So why did you choose to attend Arlington State College?
Primarily two reasons. One, I lived 10 minutes from the university, and secondly, I could afford the tuition, and I basically paid my own way through college.
What was your major?
I had a double major, history and government, or political science.
What were your first impressions of the school?
Well, growing up in Arlington, I had been by the school several times, and actually while I was in high school, my brother was on the faculty here. So I had visited several times, and so I was generally familiar with it. And it was just, there was no outstanding impression. It was just, this is the college that I'm going to, and it's a nice place. But Arlington at that time particularly was a commuter college. So the big thing for many of us was, where can I find a parking space?
So did you live in a dormitory or did you live at home?
I lived at home. I lived at home all 4 years, although I had good friends that lived in the few dorms that were available. And so I spent a lot of time in the dorm, particularly Davis, what was then Davis dorm, and is now Brazos Hall.
So you were in the Corps of Cadets here at Arlington from the beginning?
I joined it as a freshman in the fall of 1961.
So in addition to ROTC, what other campus activities did you engage in?
I was in Circle K. I was in student government. I was in the Corps of Cadets at that time, and the first 2 years were basically almost mandatory for incoming freshman boys. And so I was in, as I went through, I was in the ROTC NCO, or Non-Commissioned Officers Club, and I was in the Officers Club my senior year. I'm trying to think, but I guess the two major, and then I was in a, oh my goodness, what was it? For 1 or 2 semesters, I was in the Honorary Academic Society, and I can't remember what it was called.
What was your course load like?
Normally, I would take 15 hours a semester because I always went to summer school and took 2 courses in summer school. There were 2 semesters in summer school, so I would take a course one semester and then take another course the second semester, because I like to keep my hours down to be very honest, where I felt I could keep my grades high with 15 hours, but also have time for extracurricular activities, such as the Sam Houston Rifles, student government, Circle K, which is a service club, sponsored by the Kiwanis.
Tell me about the Sam Houston Rifles Club.
Well, that was not a club, it was a drill team. But quite frankly, it had a very dramatic impact on me, and a lasting impact, because in high school I had been rather shy, and the Sam Houston Rifles, there's a couple of things happened there. My brother had been a member of the Sam Houston Rifles, and he had been the faculty sponsor of the Sam Houston Rifles when he was there. And so when I came in, which was a year after he left, there were a lot of members of the Sam Houston Rifles that remembered him. And there was a certain amount of, I guess it would be called hazing, that went on then. But it was, as you came in as a recruit, you learned the drills, but you also were at the beck and call of the upperclassmen, members that were already on it, and they were trying to teach you discipline and mental exercises. And at coming in as the younger brother of a physical fitness nut, let's just say the things that he had them do, they remembered as part of the training, and young Latham learned to do with that. So I learned to persevere very quickly. But Sam Houston Rifles taught me discipline. They taught me, and they brought out the leadership goals. I mean, I learned how to be a leadership by watching older members, particularly a gentleman named Lee B. Wilson, who became a absolutely fantastic soldier. I also, a gentleman that you'll interview again by the name of Jerry B. Houston, was an upperclassman, and I watched how he was first the executive officer of the Sam Houston Rifles, and later the commander of the Sam Houston Rifles, and I watched how he led, and I took examples from that. So it kept me in physical condition. I learned that I could do things that I didn't know that I could do, that I could perform beyond what I expected that I could do. And I kept those lessons with me throughout life. And I also learned that if I was going to demand something of someone, that I had better be sure that I could do it myself, to lead by example rather than just telling someone to do things. And those were lessons that the rifles impacted. And quite frankly, it was a great deal of comradeship on it, because again, we had all gone through the same training. It was after I joined the Army, it was very similar to the elite military units that I belonged. You had gone through the same hardships, the same drills, the same things, and that builds a team spirit. And you learn that it's not about you, it's about the team. Because on a drill team particularly, if you tried to be an individual star, you'd mess up the rest of the team. You had to be able to synchronize your actions and everything else and your goals with that of the team. And you had to depend on your fellow team members. And I've taken those lessons with me throughout all my careers. And I say that I've had three. The military, the CIA, and then civilian employment afterwards.
Did you work while you attended Arlington State College?
Yes, I worked every summer. I was in the first group hired at Six Flags over Texan. It opened the year I graduated, and I was able for the first 3 years to fund my education through working at Six Flags during the summers and the spring. And in fact, one of the most enjoyable things I ever did was become a member of the Six Flags Confederate drill team, which was a lot of fun. And we did Sam Houston. They were all members of the Sam Houston Rifles, and we did some of our same drills there and entertained the folks. But it was a wonderful job. We drilled 10 minutes out of every half an hour, and the other 20 minutes we had our photographs taken with all the children visiting.
So there are probably a lot of photos out there with you.
Right.
You have no idea where they are.
I have no idea where they are. And then my senior year, because I had been to military ROTC camp, I'd been unable to work at Six Flags. So I drove a city bus of Fort Worth part-time in the afternoons. And that's where I laughingly say I learned diplomacy.
I've read that after you graduated, you were commissioned as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army and started active duty in 1965?
That is correct.
Did you have to attend boot camp, or did your preparation at Arlington State College take that place?
As an ROTC graduate, you don't go to boot camp, but you go to the Infantry Officers Basic Course, which is held at Fort Benning, Georgia. And I did go through that. But I had a sort of an unusual career start. At that time, the Army would let you go from graduation immediately to your unit. And so I left UTA and went directly to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, to join the 3rd Battalion of the 325th Airborne Infantry, part of the 82nd Airborne. And when I got to Fort Bragg, my unit was deployed to the Dominican Republic. There had been a crisis, a revolution down there, and the President Johnson had sent in the 82nd Airborne to deal with the situation. So I reported as a second lieutenant, and there was really no one left in very few people in my unit, just a small housekeeping group. And it was very boring, and I was going to have to stay there until my infantry officer basic class and airborne class started in late August. Two captains came back from the Dominican Republic from my unit. I met them. They asked me if I'd like to go to the Dominican Republic, and I said, absolutely. They went back, talked to the battalion commander, and I got orders to go to the Dominican Republic. So I went. I was assigned a rifle platoon, and as a young second lieutenant with no airborne training and no infantry basic training, I commanded a rifle platoon in the Dominican Republic from roughly late June until I think it was sometime in August. At that time, they discovered that I was not supposed to be down there. They sent me back, and I had, I think, 2 weeks before I went to infantry basic school. So I had been in the Dominican Republic, I think, about 45 days before, something like that.
Had you ever been overseas before?
Never.
What did you think of it?
Well, it was a tropical island, and I liked it. I like hot weather. It was great, and I had very good soldiers, and I had an outstanding platoon sergeant who took me under his wing and really taught me a lot. But it was what I had joined the Army for, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And when I finished my courses, I came back and went back to the Dominican Republic until my unit finally rotated out.
Okay. And what happened after it was rotated out?
I rotated out, came back to Fort Bragg, took over from weapons platoon, which was a heavier platoon, and really enjoyed that. I had a very good sergeant. The enlisted men in the airborne at that time were, and still are, all volunteers. So it was an elite unit. And I did that until the battalion commander decided that he needed what was called a motor officer. The lieutenant that was a motor officer got sent to Vietnam, and he needed a replacement. So I took that job, one that I did not particularly like, and I still don't like. But again, I had a very good, in that case, a warrant officer who really ran the unit. But I didn't like the job, so I did the same thing my predecessor did to get out of it. I heard they were looking for people to go to Vietnam. So.
And when was that? About what time?
That would be in the summer of 1966. So it would have been a year later, roughly. And I went to Vietnam in October 1966.
And for how long were you there?
I was there for a year. And I was an assistant advisor to a Vietnamese infantry battalion, the 3rd Battalion, 16th Regiment, 9th Infantry Division. And we were signed in the Mekong Delta, which was sole province of the Army of the Republic of Vietnam. And we were the division's reaction force, if you will. We were their, or another term would be a strategic reserve, but anytime the enemy struck, we were the ones that were sent in to find, fix, and kill them. So we had no permanent base. And we ranged all over the division's area of operation. I used to laugh and say I probably had laundry in every Chinese or Vietnamese laundries throughout the division Delta, which really comprised about 4 provinces.
Since you were moving around so much, were you able to stay in touch with your family, and how often were you able to touch base?
The communications with the family were all by what you would call snail mail now. And the way we would do that is the answer is I kept in touch by writing letters and getting letters. and but it might be, you know, several weeks or so. But eventually, we would go to division headquarters, which was always permanently in one location. And one of us, we had teams of 3 to 4 Americans with 300 Vietnamese. So there were just very few of us. But anyway, we would go, one of us would go back for orders, directions, and everything. He would pick up the mail, bring it out, and then we'd read it, and then if we wanted mail to go out, we would give it to him or me, depending on whoever it was, and we would take all the letters and drop them off at division.
Okay. Were you married at the time or before you left, or
I was
that
single.
came after? Okay. That sounds rather stressful, all the moving around and then your job assignment on top of that. Were you able to take leave, or was there any way to manage the stress?
We got a week or 2 weeks of R&R for the entire tour, and that was it. And you were given your choice of several countries to go to. You could, if you were married, and most of the married people did it, they would fly to Hawaii and meet their wives there. The bachelors, we could go to Thailand, Taiwan, Japan, and those were the ones I remember. I ended up going to Thailand. I'd never been there. It sounded exotic. Somebody told me it was, you know, beautiful place, nice place to visit. So I went to Thailand, which turned out to be very, very useful later on in an assignment. But managing the stress, I mean, it was just, it's kind of hard to describe, but I joined the Army. The Vietnam, this may sound somewhat bad, but I guess, but the assignments in the Dominican Republic and the assignments in Vietnam were things that I signed up for in the Army. I mean, it was adventuresome, it was dangerous, and there were certain aspects of being assigned to the Vietnamese Army that were different from being with an American force, because you were, I went, let me put it this, I went to 3 American captains, and I went through 4 American sergeants. I was one of the few advisors, at least in my area, that stayed with the same unit the entire tour. The rest were either killed or, as we like to say, and I regret that we did, they got their ticket punch after 6 months and they would go find a desk job somewhere. And I felt that was not the reason I was there. These Vietnamese soldiers were, in many cases, underpaid, poorly led, but they were fighting for their freedom. So,
When were you assigned to Thailand? Was it right after this tour ended, or?
no, I actually, after my Vietnamese tour ended, I wanted to be closer to home, so I went to Fort Polk, Louisiana, and I commanded a training company there, and did that for a year, and then went to Thailand and was a headquarters company there of the post and unit where we trained the Thai army that was going to Vietnam to assist in the UN cause. So we trained the Thais that went over to fight alongside the Vietnamese. And if you've ever heard of the bridge on the River Kwai or seen the movie,
Yes.
that's where my post was.
Oh, wow.
We were up on the Thai-Burma border.
It seems like it was, well, I can't even imagine what it was like being over there at that time, but are there any memorable experiences that you look upon favorably, or anything that you look back on that you find, I don't want to say humorous, but anything unusual that kind of sticks with you?
Well, it's sort of like, how much time do you have? I mean, there were a lot of things that are very memorable. I mean, celebrate, if you will, commemorate would be a better term, my own Memorial Day because of of a particular battle I was in. It happened to be the biggest battle that I was in, and it was actually Easter Sunday. You know, for some reason, I do not know why, but the older I get, the more emotional I get. And I used to be able to talk about this with no emotion at all. And I don't like to show emotion, so excuse me. But I lost a good friend and a captain, and on Easter Sunday, the 26th of March, 1967. So for myself and several other folks, that's our Memorial Day. But there were some, it was the biggest battle in the Mekong Delta up until the Tet Offensive, and I was in the middle of it. But there were humorous things happen. I mean, I guess to me they were humorous looking back. One time we went, we were preparing to deploy on an operation, and we visited a provincial headquarters because we were going to stage out of there. And you have to understand that as advisors, and particularly us, as we had no home, our area where we stayed when we weren't on operation was a rice paddy near division headquarters, and we slept on cots when we were there. The rest of the time we slept in Vietnamese hammocks, and it was nice to be short and light because I could put my hammocks actually on banana trees or banana stalks and sleep in them. If you were heavy, you couldn't do that. And in the Delta, you didn't sleep on the ground because it's wet and all of that. But anyway, we pulled into provincial headquarters, and whenever we went to a facility like that, we took turns of one of the advisors going to take a shower. And that was a big thing. So it was my turn. So I went in. We got there after dark. I went in to take a shower because they had one. And in the middle of the shower, the Viet Cong decided to mortar the place. And so, dressed with a towel and a carbine, I got out of the shower and went to the wall and so I'm standing there in flip-flops, a towel, and a carbine, and I'm thinking, you know what? This is ridiculous. But fortunately, they didn't attack. They just shelled us and let us go. There was another thing that was, to me, comical. Again, I mentioned when we would pull in, division or one of these places, we would go in. When we were at division headquarters, one of us would go in and sleep in one of the barracks that belonged to the folks that were permanently assigned there. But you, as we termed, hot bunked. You know, if someone was gone, you got their bunk. You could sleep in their bunk. If they were all filled, and you went back to your unit. So we pulled into division headquarters, and again, it was my turn. I went in and saw the supply sergeant, whoever. And he said, "Oh yeah, Captain so-and-so or Lieutenant so-and-so's gone." And it was a top bunk. And so I went in, laid down, and, just completely zonked out. The next morning, I got up, went into their mess hall to eat breakfast before rejoining my battalion, and everybody was talking about a mortar attack that happened that night. And I basically said, "Well, what are you guys talking about?" And they said, "What do you mean?" I says, "I didn't hear a mortar attack." And they said, "You were here last night?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "My God, you slept through the attack." And I laughed and said, "Well, that's what happens when you get used to these kinds of things." And it went on my way.
Were you awarded any medals or citations, and if so, how did you get these?
I mentioned the Easter Sunday battle, and I was awarded the Silver Star. The captain who was killed was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, or Distinguished Service Cross. But I got it for, as they term, gallantry in action, but it was one of those things where you make a split-second decision that you're not so sure if it's the right one at the time, and I remember thinking, I'm either going to get court-martialed or maybe get a medal, but I got to do this. And it just so happened that they gave me a medal. And actually, I was very fortunate because this battle has been written up in 3 books, and 2 of them deal with my role. The 3rd one does not, because it was written by the Vietnamese general commanding the division, and he didn't go that low. And a Look magazine article, and then several other articles. There were 5 comrades and I that went back in 2007 and revisited the battlefield on the 40th anniversary to the day. An interesting thing to me was that there were 3 infantry advisors and 2 helicopter pilots and a door gunner. And the infantry advisors, we all knew each other, but we hadn't seen each other in 40 years. The helicopter pilots, we really didn't know. These were units that supported us. I mean, they flew us all over into battle, all over the Delta, but basically all we saw of them were the back of their helmets. But we met in San Francisco, and one of them had put together this visit and went out there, and we have, because of that day, we have become fast friends and maintained contact, not only with them, but with others that we've since established contact who all share that experience. But it was a day that I saw incredible bravery and cowardice. And that's how I got my medal, because I don't know if you have time for this, but basically a Viet Cong main force battalion that had been brought up and reinforced attacked one of our sister units. And then, as they normally do, at about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, they broke off the attack to try and disappear. And we were the force that were sent in to, we were going to be heli-lifted in to fix them and either kill them or hold them till other additional units were come. But everything that could go wrong, that they did. In my case, well, what happened was the captain, we couldn't all go in the same, I'm trying to use civilian terms, we couldn't all go in the same group of helicopters. There were a limited number. So the first group were lifted in, and the captain and the Vietnamese battalion commander were there. And this was a guy, the Vietnamese battalion commander was a guy that I did not like. He'd already gotten me wounded once by stopping an attack in the middle, and when he did, I got hit by a mortar round. But anyway, and they, when they flew, and you prepare a landing zone, you prepare the area around it with artillery fire. But unfortunately, the helicopter commander decided that he was going to try to get the unit closer, so he took them into a different landing zone. And when he landed, it happened to be right in front of the VC in their dug-in positions. And they were armed with the Chinese 12.7s, which were equivalent to a 50 caliber machine gun. And they just shot the heck out of the helicopters and the troops, and shot one helicopter right on the ground. Medevac went in to try to get that crew. They shot it down. The helicopter commander decided he was going to be brave, and before they could get more support up, he went in and he got shot down. So we had 3 helicopter crews on the ground. We had the first half of my battalion, and then they decided that we would be sent in, and they landed us in a with a wood line between us. And when we got up the front, my radio didn't work, so I couldn't communicate with anybody, and everything had to go through the Vietnamese XO. And I kept saying, we need to conduct a flanking operation, which was the smart military thing to do. And he said, I can't do it. The battalion commander won't let me. And I said, well, ask him where the senior advisor is. And the answer came back, he doesn't know. So I said, okay, you guys stay here, and I will go out there and persuade the battalion commander to let us flank or find a senior advisor, find a radio, and get something going. So I did, I guess what you could say was a John Wayne activity, and it was the rainy season still, and so the mud was up to my knees. Anyway, the good Lord was looking after me, because I made it from the wood line all the way out to where all the troops were, and I found out that the captain was dead, the sergeant that was with him was in shock, all the crews were dispersed and wounded, so I got everybody together and got the battalion commander, and he refused to do what I wanted to do. They organized a rescue, spur of the moment. One that sent 3 helicopters in, and that's when I say it. When I saw bravery, I mean, it was incredible, because there was one pilot that flew a smoke ship right in front of the VC to provide smoke. This is all written up in these books, but it was just incredible. But anyway, we got the wounded Americans on the helicopters, and I looked on the last helicopter, and my battalion commander was on that helicopter flying out. And I can't tell you, I can't say in polite company what I was thinking. Turned out to be the best thing, because when he left, nobody took over, so I did, as a young American lieutenant, and I had been with the unit long enough where people listened. So long story short, with all the support, we finally, at the end of the day, assaulted the wood line. We had resources came in, and we finally gained the wood line, but it was after dark. And then as we were, but they credited me with rescuing the crews and taking over. And at the end of the day, we were looking for wounded and the bodies of the captain and others. And one of my Vietnamese soldiers came up and basically said, "Lieutenant, there's somebody out there, and we think it's an American, and we're not going close to him." Because and so I went out, and as I got close, I heard, in essence, a round being chambered, and I said, "Wait a minute, I'm an American." And in essence, thinking, "I hope you're an American." And it was one of the downed pilots who'd been there all day, really severely injured. So we got him, and I was totally out of medical supplies and morphine, and we had a gunship. In those days, it was called a C-130 Spooky. It mounted a Gatling gun in it. A wonderful weapon. But God works in mysterious ways. There was a doctor that had taken a joyride on this thing. So I told him, so we were communicating, and told him what the problem. He says, "Okay, you can hold your position." I said, "Absolutely, we're good." So they flew back to their base, got morphine, flew back and dropped it by flares. And so we doctored my people up, we doctored the American pilot up, and then the Corps commander was flying on a helicopter and overheard us. He dropped his helicopter, we put the American pilot on and flew back and got him in. Anyway, that was, and that's how I spent Easter Sunday. But I have met the pilot since, and we have become good friends. But we joke, because he's about 6 foot something, and he weighs a lot more now than he did then. And I tease him, because I say, "John, it's a good thing you were slim, because we would never have gotten you on that helicopter with what you weigh now."
Oh my goodness. When did your service end?
1969, in August, after my tour in Thailand.
Okay. Did you come straight back to Arlington, or did you go somewhere else?
No, Arlington at that time didn't have the advanced degrees that it does now. So I had decided I wanted to get out of the military for a variety of reasons. I enjoyed what I did, but there were several reasons. One of which I kind of wanted a somewhat stable life where I could meet a woman and get married. But anyway, I laugh when I say that. But I enrolled in the University of Texas, thinking I might get a PhD, and I did. Or I enrolled in the University of Texas government. I decided to specialize in Southeast Asia since I'd already had 2 years there. I liked it. I really enjoyed the people and all of that. And thought I would probably teach the atmosphere, even at what some would consider a conservative university, Texas University, was not very welcoming to Vietnam veterans. And I quickly deduced that I wasn't going to get very far in the academic world as a Vietnam veteran. But I had some wonderful instructors there, particularly the gentleman who supervised my graduate thesis. And one of them said, I know someone that you might be interested in talking to with your background. And I said, okay, that's fine, I need a job. What is it? He said, well, he'll explain it to you. So I met a gentleman, a very nice gentleman, in a motel room in Austin, Texas. And he said, in essence, how would you like to work for the CIA? And I said, wow, I think I would. So he said, good, here's the requirements. And he gave me the requirements. He said, now you have to go through a lot of training and you may or may not wash out. Or you might wash out or you may make it. And I said, well, let's give it a shot and see what. So I went to Washington, and 27 years later I retired.
Do you think the transition from military to civilian life was easier because he went into the CIA, or would have been more difficult if he had become an academic?
I think it would have become more difficult as an academic. I think it was easier into the CIA, or even into a business probably, than as an academic. For me, the military and the CIA were really good. And I used my military experience and background in the CIA in some of the assignments. And the leadership lessons that I learned at UTA and the military, I used every day.
Are you at liberty to discuss your job assignments with the CIA?
In general.
Okay.
I was an operations, if you want that information.
Yes, please.
I was an operations officer. I recruited and ran spies, and then later on I ran programs that recruited and ran spies, and I was extremely fortunate. There's a joke in the CIA, which is true, is that when you're in the field, you can't believe they pay you. When you're assigned to headquarters in Washington, there's no amount of money they can pay you that makes it worthwhile because of the Washington bureaucracy and stuff. But I joke that I've been in one war and 2 revolutions, and one of those revolutions was when I was in the CIA, and that was a wonderful experience. I mean, it was truly interesting, and it was a revolution that was a good revolution. I mean, it was a revolt against a dictator, and that was a great time, great experience. I got to work on some of the most pressing intelligence problems of my era, Russia, China, the Middle East, all kinds of stuff, and I was privileged to work with a group of very dedicated people, and it was especially some of the assignments were absolutely mentally stimulating. I worked with, I came out as a history government major in background, but through the working with these people, and some of whom were my sources, and the best in their field. But I learned economics, science, the oil industry, computers, information technology, agriculture. It was just one. And I got to go to places that an East Texas farm boy, I would have never dreamed that I'd been able to go. I spent a total of 9 years in Asia, and I've been to almost every Asian country that you can think of. I've been to the Middle East, I've been to Africa, I've been to Eastern Europe, what we now call Central Europe. And as one of my CIA classmates, I mean, you go through training there like you do other places, and so you have classes. And one of my classmates and I met after about 10 years, and we were both back at headquarters. He said, "Well, how you doing?" I said, "I'm doing well. How about you?" And we were chatting, and he said, "You know, Rex," he said, "there's the banquet circuit, meaning like Europe, Rome, Italy," and he said, "and there's the armpit circuit, you know, the third world countries and stuff." And he said, "You know which circuit we're on?" And I said, "Yeah," but I said, "Tell you what, we have a lot more fun." And we did. I mean, you know, I used to joke that you hear of spies having to wear tuxedos and that thing. Most of the time, I was in a brush jacket or the local native dress, and it was a lot more comfortable, and it was a lot more fun. I joked if it was a big, dirty Asian city with intermittent power, that was where I was going to be assigned. Or as my son said, on one assignment, when I came home and proudly announced where we were going, and his response was, "Not another third world country." However, I will tell you that as we neared the end of that tour, both my children came up and said, "Can you extend?" So.
Well, it's nice you were able to take your family with you.
I did. Yes. My family went with me almost all the time. However, I had assignments where I would leave my family in one country and fly to other countries on a regular basis. So my wife was a wonderful woman, but she had to deal with me being gone a lot, and she didn't know. She knew generally where I would be, but she didn't know what I was doing, or in many cases, even if I was operating under my own name or identity. And that one assignment, that was 2 weeks out of every month. So she put up with a lot. And most of my assignments also, I mean, I give high credit to my wife, because we would move into a country or city and I'd take off. And so she unpacked and packed and, you know, all of that sort of stuff. A remarkable woman.
So you retired from the CIA in 1998?
Yes.
And did you retire completely, or you went into the civilian sector afterward, right?
I went into the civilian sector.
What did you end up, what did you do right after you left?
Well, I worked about 4 years for Electronic Data Systems,
Okay.
headquartered in the Dallas area. And I was a paid employee, but basically I consulted them on how to tailor their products and other stuff for the intelligence community. And part of that was explaining what the intelligence community needed, and also how to present it, because they were engineers, so the first thing they wanted to tell you was what a wonderful engineering product they had, and et cetera, and I basically had to say, look, as a consumer, I'm not interested in that. What I want to know is, here's my mission, here's my objective, here's what I need to do. How does your product help me reach that goal or achieve that mission? I said, once you explain that to me, then you can tell me all the technical details. So I was a well-paid translator. And then I went to a small company. It was 30 people, which was a lot more fun. And I got to travel all over the world consulting with businesses and governments on continuity of operations and due diligence. You know, who are your, if you're dealing with a company in another country or people, what do you really know about them? You know, are they legitimate? Are they good people, bad people? And so that's what my company did.
That's impressive. It seems like your time with the Sam Houston Rifles the drill team influenced your life and your career. Do you engage in any alumni reunions with them, or chapters or anything like that?
The answer is yes. We have had an alumni association. Actually, it predates the Cadet Corps alumni. But in recent years, because of the change in the military and the, if you will, the decline of drill teams, it's not active anymore in that sense. We really, those members, those of us who were in the Sam Houston Rifles have, if you will, moved our loyalty to the Cadet Corps in our efforts. So yes, we still take pride in being part of the Sam Houston Rifles. They're apparently reestablishing it here in the Cadet Corps this year, and we're delighted with that. And we visit again during the Hall of Honor and all of that, but it's more inclusive with the Cadet Corps.
You seem to have a lot of, there were some conflicting emotions in your time during the military from what I gathered, but with your military experience and your work with the CIA, has that influenced your current views on today's military and its campaigns, or I'm just trying to figure out if that has, if the way it's changed, how have if your views have changed with the way the military has changed over the years?
No, I mean, I'm very proud and pleased with the military and what it's performed. And I wish to share that I do not regret my service. I'm delighted. I determined that for a variety of reasons that I wanted to pursue another career. I went into the military expecting to make it a career. For a variety of personal reasons, I decided to do something else that I thought was better suited, and I was very fortunate. By going into the CIA, I think that fit my talents and strengths and abilities better. I think I could have, honestly, based on my performance in the military, I think I could have done as well in the military. But I think I did. I was better suited for the CIA. And I used the experience that I got in the military and the lessons that I learned in the military in the CIA, very much so. So the military had a positive influence, and I found it extremely useful. For example, in one instance, I was dealing with a high-level official of another country when I was in the CIA, and I noticed that he had a pair of American jump wings. And so, and we had not been able to do very much with this country, let's put it that way. And my job was to remedy that situation. So I looked and I said, I see you have American jump wings. Would you go to jump school at Fort Benning? And he proudly said, yes. And I said, I did too. He said, oh, when were you there? And so we went back and forth. And suddenly, at the end of that conversation, the atmosphere became much warmer and much friendly. And then he said, well, you know, how long did you spend in the military? And I told him, and he said, were you in Vietnam and all this? And what were you? I said, I was airborne infantry. He said, oh yeah. He said, so was I. So am I. Yeah. And again, and I found that extremely useful in a variety of countries and situations.
In 2000, you were recognized as a UT Arlington Distinguished Alumnus. Returning to campus for events such as this weekend's, Military Hall of Honors, what campus changes have you noticed that you wish had been around when you were a student here?
Well, the food. You've got a lot more variety of food, but you've got buildings and resources that we've never dreamed of. So those are wonderful things, and I'm delighted that you have them. At the same time, I enjoyed UTA because it was smaller, and so therefore it was easier to know more people. So you weigh one with the other. But I mean, I'm very proud of UTA. My son went to UTA and is a UTA graduate. And I'm proud of the international flavor in UTA. And actually I teased my son, because he grew up overseas, that one of the things he had said, he would never attend UTA because his uncle, his cousins, his dad had gone there. He said, I don't want any part of that. But when we visited UTA, we visited one of the buildings, and I can't remember which one, but he saw all the flags of the countries that had students here. And he thought, oh, wait a minute, this is truly an international student body. I fit in here. And so he did. He's never left the area.
Well, before we wrap up, is there anything you would like to contribute to the interview that I didn't address?
Well, I enjoyed my time at UTA. And again, the ROTC and the academics here they taught me discipline, how to budget my time, how to care for it. And the staff, I cannot talk about the current faculty because I don't know it. But UTA, when I was here, and particularly in the History of Government department and the ROTC department, there was a Colonel McDowell, a Major Manifold, who were absolutely superb leaders. In fact, Colonel McDowell retired and came back on the faculty and taught Russian and established the Russian department. In the history department, there were teachers like E.C. Barksdale and C.D. Richards who made every class, although very demanding, a lot of fun. They both could have been comedians if they hadn't been college professors. Emory Estes in the English department, and he was here for years and years, was not only a wonderful teacher, but a terrific individual. And all of those inspired me. It inspired me to learn. I mean, I grew to have a great appreciation just for learning, and I appreciate what UTA meant in that regard.
Well, it has been a pleasure talking with you today, and I want to thank you, Mr. Latham, for taking the time to talk with us. You were very helpful and informative, and I thank you for your service and your contribution to this project.
Well, thank you. I wish you well with your project, and I appreciate what the project is doing for veterans. You'll have a lot more, I think, interesting interviewees than me, but I think you'll get some wonderful stories and experience, and thank you. Nice meeting you.
It's nice meeting you too.